The night was unusually still when the call came in. I remember it vividly. The soft glow of the dispatch screen, the low hum of computers, and then the sudden jarring ring that shattered the quiet. Little did I know that answering that call would plunge me into a nightmare that still haunts me to this day. 911, what's your emergency? I said, my voice steady and practiced. The response chilled me to the bone. A frantic whisper, barely audible, came through the line. Help me! Room 237! They're coming! Then nothing but static. I tried to trace the call, my fingers flying over the keyboard. The location that popped up made my blood run cold. Omega City Hotel, but that couldn't be right. The hotel had been abandoned for years. Left to rot in the mountains after a series of unexplained disappearances drove it out of business. As I stared at the blinking cursor on my screen, a weird feeling ran through my entire body. How could someone be calling from a place that had been empty for so long? Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a mystery that would consume my life and push me to the very edge of sanity. The next morning, I found myself in Captain Reeves's office, recounting the strange call. His weathered face creased with concern as I spoke. "Detective Thorne," he said, leaning back in his chair, "I want you to check this out. It's probably nothing, but—" I nodded, understanding the unspoken worry. In our line of work, we couldn't afford to ignore even the strangest of leads. As I left his office, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to step into something far beyond my usual cases of petty theft and domestic disturbances. The drive to Omega City Hotel was long and winding. As I ascended into the mountains, the world seemed to grow quieter, as if nature itself was holding its breath. The hotel loomed before me, a decaying giant against the backdrop of pine-covered slopes. Its once grand facade was now a patchwork of peeling paint and boarded-up windows. I parked my car and stepped out, the gravel crunching beneath my feet. The air was thick with the scent of pine and something else, something old and musty that made me wrinkle my nose. As I approached the entrance, a gust of wind whipped through the trees, and for a moment, I could have sworn I heard whispers carried on the breeze. The front doors creaked open with surprising ease, and I found myself in a lobby, frozen in time. A thick layer of dust covered everything. The reception desk, the faded armchairs, the grand staircase leading to the upper floors. Sunlight filtered through grimy windows, casting long shadows across the floor. I pulled out my flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing in the empty space. "This is Detective Evelyn Thorne. Is anyone here?" Silence was my only answer, but as I moved deeper into the hotel, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. My footsteps echoed on the marble floor, each sound seeming to reverberate unnaturally in the stillness. Behind the reception desk, I found a guest log, its pages yellow with age. As I flipped through it, entries caught my eye. Complaints of strange noises, guests requesting room changes, and one particularly unsettling note. "The whispers won't stop. God help me, they won't stop." A sudden crash from upstairs made me jump, my heart pounding in my chest. "Is someone there?" I called out, my hand instinctively moving to my holstered gun. No response came. But as I listened intently, I could hear the faintest sound of laughter, childlike and eerie, echoing from above. As I stood there, torn between investigating further and calling for backup, I couldn't help but wonder, what would you do if you heard whispers in an abandoned hotel? Would you run, or would curiosity drive you to uncover the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be? With a deep breath, I steeled myself and began to climb the grand staircase. Each step creaked under my weight, the sound impossibly loud in the silence. The second floor was a long hallway, stretching in both directions, doors lining each side. Room numbers, tarnished and crooked, adorned each door. As I moved down the hallway, the feeling of being watched intensified. Shadows seemed to flicker at the edge of my vision, always disappearing when I turned to look. The air grew colder, and I could see my breath misting in front of me. A movement caught my eye, a door at the far end of the hall slowly swinging shut. My heart raced as I approached, gun drawn. "This is the police!" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Show yourself!" I pushed the door open, revealing a standard hotel room, or what had once been one. The bed was stripped bare, the mattress stained and moldy. Wallpaper peeled from the walls in long strips, revealing patches of black mold beneath. But what caught my attention was the writing on the mirror. Smeared and barely legible, it read, "They're in the walls." Honestly, I was really scared as I examined the room. In the corner, I found a small notebook, its pages filled with frantic scribbles. It seemed to be a diary of sorts, belonging to a guest named Margaret. As I flipped through it, her descent into paranoia and fear became clear. She wrote of whispers in the night, of shadows moving on their own, and of a malevolent presence that seemed to permeate the very walls of the hotel. The final entry got me really terrified. Room 237. It all leads back to room 237. God help me, I have to know the truth. As I closed the diary, a whisper seemed to echo through the room, so faint I almost thought I'd imagined it. But then it came again, a little louder this time. Room 237. Room 237. I found myself wondering, do you believe some places can be inherently evil? Can brick and mortar absorb the darkness of human actions, becoming a host for malevolent forces? As I stood in that decaying room, Margaret's frantic writings clutched in my hand, I was beginning to think it might be possible. With a sense of foreboding, I made my way back to the hallway, my eyes scanning the room numbers. 235, 236, and there it was, room 237. The door was slightly open, a sliver of darkness visible through the crack. My hand trembled slightly as I pushed the door open. The room beyond was pitch black, my flashlight beam seeming to be swallowed by the darkness. As I stepped inside, the temperature dropped dramatically, my breath coming out in visible puffs. The beam of my flashlight revealed a room in disarray. Furniture was overturned, deep scratches marred the walls, and in the center of the room, a single chair faced the far wall. As I approached, I noticed something carved into the wood of the chair's back, a crude symbol I didn't recognize, but which filled me with an inexplicable sense of dread. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. I whirled around, my heart pounding, but there was no one there. As I turned back, my blood froze in my veins. There, in the beam of my flashlight, stood a figure, translucent and shimmering, with hollow eyes that seemed to bore into my soul. I blinked and it was gone, but the whispers remained, growing louder, more insistent. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, a cacophony of tormented voices begging for release. As I stood there, paralyzed with fear, the true nature of the hotel began to reveal itself. The walls seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, shadows danced and twisted in impossible ways, and the whispers grew to a deafening roar. I ran as I've never run before, down the hallway that seemed to stretch endlessly before me, down the stairs that creaked and groaned as if trying to trip me. Behind me I could hear something that shouldn't exist in our world, something hungry and ancient and evil. As I burst through the front doors, gasping for air, I realized with horror that night had fallen. How long had I been in there? It had felt like minutes, but the position of the moon told me hours had passed. I scrambled into my car, fumbling with the keys, all too aware of the presence that seemed to loom behind me. As I sped down the mountain road, my rearview mirror showed only darkness, but a darkness that seemed to move and shift as if alive. When I finally reached the station, disheveled and wild-eyed, my story was met with disbelief and concern. Captain Reeves listened patiently, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. "Evelyn," he said gently, "maybe you should take some time off. You've been under a lot of stress lately." But I knew what I had seen, what I had experienced. The diary I had taken from the hotel was proof, wasn't it? But when I reached for it, I got the shock of my life. My pocket was empty. Somehow, in my frantic escape, I had lost the one piece of evidence that could corroborate my story. I really regretted going there alone. Had it been I went there with one or two other officers, at least the story from more than one mouth will be believable. In the days and weeks that followed, I tried to put the experience behind me, but the nightmares persisted. Dreams of endless dark hallways, of whispers that grew to screams, of a presence so evil it defied description. I found myself jumping at shadows, always looking over my shoulder, half expecting to see a shimmering figure with hollow eyes. Years passed, and slowly the intensity of the memories faded. I had almost convinced myself it had all been a stress-induced hallucination when the news report caught my eye. Plans to rebuild on the site of the old Omega City Hotel. My warnings fell on deaf ears. After all, I was the detective who had cracked up years ago. As I watched the report, showing smiling developers standing on the overgrown grounds of the hotel, I became sorry for them. And as I sit here now, recording this story, I can't help but wonder, if you had the chance, be it as a police officer or not, to explore a haunted location, knowing the risks, would you take it? Apparently all humans respond to this urge to want to find the root of matters. Perhaps it's the same impulse that drove me to enter Omega City Hotel that day. The need to know, to understand, even in the face of terror. But be warned, some truths are better left uncovered, some doors better left unopened. For once you've glimpsed what lies beyond, you can never truly close that door again. Peace out from here.